Hey, how are you? Ready to go for a run?
Running connects us to a rush of energy that flows through our world. The cheers of friends that unlock a new gear within us. The intersection of interests that inspires a run crew. The support that gets you over the finish line. Connection is why we move forward and what inspires us to keep going. Let's run there. Learn more at brooksrunning.com.
Listen, all you New Yorkers.
Excuse me, taxi.
Okay, man, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
We have this whole back and forth between Pope Leo and President Trump. Look, I think in the end, if the Vatican and the Pope wants to start making political statements, they have to expect a political response. It's not like they can make criticism of this administration, of this war, of our immigration policy, and not expect a response. It's really that simple. I have all the respect in the world for Pope Leo and the Vatican and the Church. However, if they want to debate, well, it goes both ways. And in this case, the fact that they're talking more and more about how church attendance is down in certain cities because illegals are afraid to come. Well, sorry, they broke the law. Americans, a majority of them, support them being deported, even if they're not criminals. So for them to start weighing in on our immigration policy is a whole bowl of wrong. And then obviously with the Iran war, considering that this is an apocalyptic terror regime that we're talking about here, killed 30,000 people of its own people in the streets that were peacefully protesting the way they treat women, the way they treat Catholics. I mean, forget about what's going on in Nigeria, for example, where Catholics are being slaughtered. I think maybe we should be concentrating a little bit more on that if I'm the church. But in the end, a terror organization, which is posing as a country, and we're talking about the Pope saying that this is not a just war, and other bishops, well, what would you deem a just war exactly, given Iran's actions recently and over the last 5 decades? Anyway, here's J.D. Vance, who met the Pope not too long ago, obviously a very religious man, talking about the Pope and asking this devastating question, in my view. This is cut number 2. Go.
Even when there's disagreement, I like it when the Pope comments on questions of immigration. I like it when the Pope talks about abortion. I like it when the Pope talks about matters of war and peace, because I think that at the very least it invites a conversation. So I think some people, their reaction to this is to say, well, he shouldn't have said that. And look, there are certainly things that the Pope has said in the last few months that I disagree with. Let me just take like one very concrete example related to this conflict in Iran. So the Pope said something where he said, and I'm going to try to remember the exact quote, but he said that God is never on the side of those who wield the sword. God is never on the side of those who wield the sword. I'm pretty sure that he said that exact statement. Now, on the one hand, again, I like that the Pope is an advocate for peace. I think that's certainly one of his roles. On the other hand, how can you say that God is never on the side of those who wield the sword? Was God on the side of the Americans who liberated France from the Nazis? Was God on the side of the Americans who liberated Holocaust camps and liberated those innocent people from, those who had survived the Holocaust? I certainly think the answer is yes, and I agree. Jesus Christ does not. I agree.
These are all good questions, and again, I just don't know why. Well, I know why. One theory that's been thrown out there is that David Axelrod of the Obama administration, senior advisor to Obama, all this criticism only came after Axelrod, who's now with CNN, went over to the Vatican, met with the Pope, and then suddenly we're hearing all these statements around how the Iran war is unjust, because remember the way the Obama administration treated Iran with kid gloves, and I'm being generous there. Billions in terms of pallets of cash, this Iran deal, which obviously didn't do anything to prevent them in terms of pursuing a nuclear weapon. Their proxies continued to act unabated. Just look at Hezbollah and their constant bombardment of Israel in the north, Hamas, and what happened on October 7th, the Houthis constantly bombing our ships in the Strait of Hormuz. in the Gulf of Oman and elsewhere. So, again, this is something that, in terms of a just war, you can't think of a more just war at this point. And from my perspective, I'm not a war expert in any way, shape, or form. I didn't serve in the military. I'm just looking at the math, and the math says that Iran economically cannot survive for even another 2 weeks. And we'll put it at that. Before we go to break, Tom Homan, also a lifelong Catholic. Obviously, he is in charge as far as the borders are and deportations. This is him also sending a message to the Pope in terms of the Pope talking about our immigration policy here in the U.S. under Trump. This is cut number 3. Go.
I'm not going to speak for the president. I'm speaking for myself, a lifelong Catholic. I wish they stay out of immigration. They don't know what they're talking about. Because if they wore my shoes for 40 years and talked to a 9-year-old girl that got raped multiple times, or stood in the back of tractor trailer with 19 dead aliens at my feet, including a 5-year-old boy that baked to death, if they understood the atrocities that happen on an open border, I think their opinion would change. And I welcome a discussion with any of them because they don't understand. Illegal immigration is not a victimless crime. What President Trump had the most secure border in the lifetime of this nation right now. Lives are being saved. He's saving thousands of lives a year because he has a secure border. Human traffickers are out of business, right? The cartels are going bankrupt because of that secure border. I wish they'd understand that, because if they did, I think they have a different opinion.
That's exactly right. We hear all about deportation and how these poor people have to go back to their country of origin after they broke into our country illegally. What we rarely hear about are the thousands, tens of thousands of children who have been the victim of sex trafficking, of rape, of kidnapping. All these horrible things that have happened, especially under the Otto Penn administration. And now we're trying to wrong this right. And the fact that, again, the Vatican talking about our immigration policy, we're not talking about legal immigrants. We'll welcome them all day long if they go through the process correctly. Illegal, however, should never, ever be tolerated. And if you want to know how that's going over in Europe, just look at France, look at Britain, look at other Northern European countries where it is now a nightmare over there. It simply does not work. Mass illegal immigration. The results have been disastrous, and now the U.S. at least is trying to do something about it. The Vatican, all due respect, stick to morality issues and stop criticizing what we're doing over here. And if you're going to get political, you're going to get a political response.